All right, so what we're starting today is the battle with Grendel. Everything that we've read so far, from the wrath of Grendel and learning why Grendel's aggravated with the Danes, to the fact that he kills them every night for 12 years until Beowulf finally hears about it. Beowulf sails across the sea. He brings proof of all the stories of monsters that he's fought and defeated, and he tells King Hrothgar and the Danes that he is there to fight Grendel, save them from the monster Grendel, and he's willing to die. So we're actually finally getting to the battle. So as we read this first part, we're going to be looking at, we're really going to be focusing on two things. Number one is just we want to look at what is happening. But also, I'm going to be pointing out some literary devices so that as we look through it and we look a little bit deeper, those literary devices aren't just there for you to have to find. They're devices that will help you once you can identify them and understand the purpose, then it helps you to be able to better comprehend what you're reading. So, let's look at this first part. We're just going to read from here down to here. That's going to be the first part that we read. And what we're going to be focusing on here is where is he coming from? All right, so where is he coming from? Where is he going? And how is he getting there? As in, like, what's the description of how he's getting there? And so I'm going to highlight 3 different colors. I'm going to highlight yellow, and then I'm going to do blue and green. So those are going to be my highlight colors. We're just going to read this first part, and then after we read that, we'll break it down.
Grendel. That night Beowulf and his men take the places of Hrothgar and Danes inside Herot. While his men sleep, Beowulf lies awake, eager to meet with Grendel. Out from the marsh, from the foot of the misty hills and bogs, bearing God's hatred, Grendel came, hoping to kill anyone he could trap on this trip to High Herod. He moved quickly through the cloudy night, up from his swampland, sliding silently toward that gold-shining hall. He had visited Hrothgar's home before, knew the way, but never before nor after that night found Herod defended so firmly, his reception so harsh.
All right, so let's do this. I'm going to go through, I'm going to highlight. So let's just do the yellow first. We're going to be looking at where is Grendel coming from. So he's coming from the marsh, and then down a little bit further says his swampland. So he's coming from the marsh and his swampland. Now the next thing I want to focus on is where is he going? On the 4th line it says that he's going to High Herod. Remember, Herod is the mead hall where all of the Danes are having their parties and making a lot of noise and singing, which is what frustrates Grendel. But it's also called the Gold Shining Hall. So it's described as the Gold Shining Hall. So we've got where is he coming, where is he going? He's coming from the swampland to Herod, the Gold Shining Hall. And then with our green, we're just going to go in there and we're going to look at how is it described? How does he travel there? It says that he moves quickly. And then on this next line, he's sliding silently. So we get all of this, and we have our highlights. He's coming from the swampland, the marsh. He's going to High Herod, the Gold Shining Hall. He is moving quickly and sliding silently. All right, so that is Grendel's travel to Herod. This next part that we're going to focus on, and I want you to compare and contrast this here, because the way that he travels to Herod versus how he actually enters Herod is very different. So as we read this next portion, which is going to start up here, It's going to start right here, and we're going to read, and it's going to go on to the next page.
He journeyed, forever joyless, straight to the door, then snapped it open, tore its iron fastenings with a touch, and rushed angrily over the threshold. He strode quickly across the inlaid floor, snarling and fierce. His eyes gleamed in the darkness, burned with a gruesome light. Then he stopped, seeing the hall crowded with sleeping warriors, stuffed with rows of young soldiers resting together, and his heart laughed. He relished the sight, intended to tear the life from those bodies by morning. The monster's mind was hot with the thought of food and the feasting his belly would soon know. But fate that night intended Grendel to gnaw the broken bones of his last human supper. Human eyes were watching his evil steps, waiting to see his swift, hard claws. Grendel snatched at the first bead he came to, ripped him apart, cut his body to bits with powerful jaws, drank the blood from his veins, and bolted him down hands and feet. Death and Grendel's great teeth came together, snapping life short.
On this part, we're going to go back up, and I want to focus on how Grendel actually enters into Herod, because it's a little bit different from how he travels there. So this is on how he enters. All right, so I'm going to keep my green highlight, because the highlight of green, that was how he traveled to Herod. So since we're keeping with how he enters, so he snaps the door open, he tears the iron fasteners with a touch, he rushes angrily over the threshold, he strode quickly across the inlaid floor, and then he's snarling and fierce. So if you look at all of these details, this is how he enters. And it's very different from how he travels to Herod. When he travels to Herod, he's sliding silently, he's moving quickly. So he's trying to sneak up on them before they realize that he's there. But once he actually enters Herod, he enters by bursting in, and at that point, he's there. He doesn't need to sneak up on them anymore. So you can see a big difference between how he gets there and how he enters. So let's move down a little bit further. All right, so on this page, we read on this page, I want to point out from here to here. All right, so says that he stopped, he looks around, he sees the hall crowded with sleeping warriors, and so he looks around. And this is a big part right here. His heart laughed, and you're going to notice that on your document I have a question over to the side of what type of figurative language or what literary device is this. So let's think about this. A heart. Is a heart a person? No, it's not a person. It's inside of a person, but it's not a person. So what type of figurative language is this? So think about that. Because it says that his heart laughed. Heart is not a person. Like I said, it's inside of a person, but it's not a person. It can't literally laugh. But this is figurative language. And here's the thing. You've got to start taking that figurative language to the next step. It's great if you can identify figurative language and you know what this is. But if you can't tell me the purpose of it, then you miss the whole point of figurative language. So if you figure out what the figurative language is, the next part is, what does that tell you about Grendel? This is going to tell us something about Grendel's feelings. So what does it tell you about his feelings? All right. And then once you can tell me what he's feeling, I want you to figure out, why does he feel that way? Why does he feel that way? And I'm going to underline the why. It says that he relished the sight, intended to tear the life from those bodies by morning, and then the food and feasting his belly would soon know. So there's your why. So there's your why right there. But what you need to figure out is you have to figure out what type of figurative language is it, and what does that tell us about Grendel's feelings. All right, so you need to put that to the side in the notes, reply to my notes, and put that there. This next part right here, this kind of confuses some of my students in the past, because this part, Grendel kills one of the Geats. And the Geats are Beowulf's men. And so a lot of students are always like, well, why does he go in? Why does Beowulf let him go in and rip his man apart and kill him? It says he drank the blood, bolted him down, and so forth. So, and then it says death and Grendel's great teeth came together, snapping life shut. So why does Beowulf let this happen to one of his men? Well, yes, it's terrible that it happens, but think about the mission. These men are on a mission to kill Grendel. This is their chance, and if they blow this chance, they might blow the chance to defeat Grendel. So their whole goal is to lure Grendel into Herot far enough for Beowulf to be able to fight him. So one of his men die, but that's just part of the mission. This next portion that we're going to read is whenever Grendel actually makes it to Beowulf. So I want you to pay attention to what it's like between Grendel and Beowulf in the very beginning.
He stepped to another still body, clutched at Beowulf with his claws, grasped at a strong-hearted, wakeful sleeper, and was instantly seized himself, claws bent back as Beowulf leaned up on one arm. That shepherd of evil, guardian of crime, knew at once that nowhere on earth had he met a man whose hands were harder. His mind was flooded with fear, but nothing could take his talons and himself from that tight, hard grip. Grendel's one thought was to run from Beowulf, flee back to his marsh, and hide there. This was a different Herod than the hall he had entered. But Higelac's follower remembered his final boast, and standing erect, stopped the monster's flight, fastened those claws in his fists till they cracked, clutched Grendel closer. The infamous killer fought for his freedom, wanting no flesh but retreat, desiring nothing but escape. His claws had been caught. He was trapped. That trip to Herod was a miserable journey for the writhing monster.
So as we read this portion, I underlined a few things that I want to make sure that we get. So it says that Beowulf was a strong-hearted, wakeful sleeper. So this might be confusing, but he is awake and waiting, but he's pretending to be asleep. So he is awake. All right. So so he goes to Beowulf. Beowulf's pretending to be asleep, but as soon as he goes to grab at Beowulf, Beowulf leans up on one arm and he grabs Grendel. So this next part right here, I underlined these two, and this is what we call a kenning. And a kenning is a metaphorical phrase or compound word that's used to describe or rename something. So instead of constantly saying Grendel, 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 we get the kenning for Grendel, shepherd of evil, guardian of crime. All right, so this next part right here, this is how Grendel feels. Says that his mind was flooded with fear. He wanted to run. He wanted to flee back, go back to his marsh and hide there. I'll even underline that part. And he does all of this because he wants to survive. He does all of that because he wants to survive, and he knows that if he stays there and he fights Beowulf, there's a good chance he's going to die. But why does Beowulf, because we get this part right here, why does Beowulf not let him go? Because he has a mission. He is on a quest. And his mission is to kill. Is to defeat Beowulf. Is to defeat Grendel. So Whenever Grendel finally fights Beowulf, he wants to run, but Beowulf will not let him.